Welcome to Booked and Branded, the podcast where we dive into the world of entrepreneurship, personal branding, and building a business that feels as good as it looks. I'm Ellie, and each week we'll have inspiring conversations with founders, creatives, and changemakers from around the world, teaching both you and me how to do business and entrepreneurship better. Whether you're a freelancer, creative, or a business owner, this is your space to learn, get inspired, and to take action to build a business and a life that you love. Let's dive into it. Welcome to the Booked and Branded podcast. Today in the studio we have Asher Haynes. Asher is a dynamic, multidisciplinary designer with a rich background spanning graphic and industrial design, branded environments, UX, UI, wayfinding, digital and web design, and marketing and communications roles. With a decade of experience working across top-tier architecture firms, creative agencies, and now as an independent contractor, Ash has built a reputation for blending strategy and style to create high-quality and impactful design solutions. Welcome to the studio, Ash!
Thank you so much.
How are you today?
I'm a bit nervous. Nobody's ever asked me to be on a podcast before. I feel like I should have signed some autographs on the way in.
Yeah, she's famous girly now.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to start with early background career for you. So just our audience can get a little bit of context on where you started and how you got to sitting in this podcast seat today.
Okay. Well, it's a bit of a long story. So I would say that I've been very creatively inclined since I was in primary school, not in the typical way. I was never a good drawer or anything like that, but I have always been quite a creative problem solver, very good at visualizing things and quite a strong imagination. And so that really drove me to really creative pursuits through high school. I studied design technology and industrial design through most of my primary and high school elective subject options. And then a really natural path. I felt very lucky to know exactly kind of the direction that I was heading coming out of high school, where so many of my peers were really struggling. And I went straight into a double bachelor of graphic and industrial design. Since I actually dropped out, don't tell any of my previous employers, they all know. So I actually got a couple of roles in industry and felt that I was learning more there than I was at uni. And so much these days of university is hands-on practice, and so I was getting a lot of that, in industry, which was great. So I was working for a furniture design company. I was doing everything from design to manufacture, which was right along what I was really interested in. And then I worked for a homewares firm, that's not the right word, a homewares company doing everything, graphic design, marketing, comms, strategy for campaigns and stuff like that. And they both really blew up. And so I dropped out of uni. And everything since then has been really I would say I'm a very opportunistic person. It's never anything that I've necessarily gone after, but I'm a yapper, and even our little meet cute story, it's which we'll come back to. The opportunities kind of found me, which I'm really lucky, and I just grabbed the ones that felt right with me. And I started in architecture firms actually, and worked as a designer within architecture for about 8 years, 7-8 years before I transitioned to full design agency. And that's why I call myself a multidisciplinary designer, because I've worked as a designer within a bunch of different sectors, wearing many different hats, real human Swiss Army knife sort of roles, just whatever each day requires. But I think that's how I've ended up here. I'm really lucky that because I have seen so many different sectors from so many different angles, then when I went to contracting, freelancing, that felt like less of a scary step than going from exclusively in one kind of agency style role for my entire career to working for myself. So yeah, that's how I've ended up here. Should I tell our little meet cute story on
Yeah,
exactly
go
why
on.
I'm here? Ellie and I were at a co-working space not far from here, and the lovely staff brought a oat flat white, and we both reached for it in our hands like, oh, touched,
Little
and
touch.
it was very romantic.
Very
And we'd
romantic.
both been having a little perv on each other's laptop screens, sitting side by side, and got chatting, and now working with the girl boss of my dreams.
Aw, I'm so excited to have you on the team. It's like, it's so crazy that it's been like from like our cute little coffee
I know.
finger grace
Yeah,
to becoming friends. And
I know. And then like, oh my gosh, it happened so quickly. You're just so talented, and like I feel like our skills are very complementary. You are such a have such a leadership. Sorry, I'm massively now just like
gassing me
derailing,
up.
but
No, I love.
but yeah, your like leadership. This is I guess exactly what I'm talking about. And opportunistic, when it feels like working with the right people, that's way more enticing to me than, I don't know, working with some major brand. Is I'm really driven by the people that I work with and the problems that I'm solving instead.
You have a design brain for everything, which is what I really love about you. You're always looking at things from a design perspective, particularly with your branding design. Like the branding designs that you've showed me that you've done are amazing and stunning. And I know you're working on a few projects at the moment. Can you tell me a little bit about, from that brand side, what you're thinking about when you are designing a brand, when you're creating a brand?
So I think the benefit of having such a diverse design background is we speak a lot, and we've seen a rise in the last sort of 10 years of the consideration of user experience. And I think that diverse perspective, and not just of my own, like we always use a test, but having that diverse background gives me a really unique perspective to consider things from a broader range of angles, I suppose. I think, we're looking more now, when I'm thinking about building a brand that really resonates, we think about brand strategy, but also brand psychology and emotional branding, and thinking about almost data-driven ways to engage people with a brand. And so ways that you can leverage color, and like is a really easy one. Color, we know psychologically creates different emotions, and different, when you think of high-end brands, you think of like Hermes, and they have the signature orange, and that has a real story ingrained with the history of the brand and these kinds of things. Then so the Hermes orange really like sells luxury, and so that's a really like basic example of ways that you can leverage just the tiniest aspects of a design to resonate more deeply with an audience, without having to tell the story yourself. You want it to speak for itself, these little things. And so I guess, yeah, thinking of the foundational strategy behind the design that's the strong foundation for building a brand that resonates, which is hopefully the angle that I pull through for my clients.
There's so many touch points that I think a brand needs to be considering. Could you talk a little bit about that, and if you've had any experiences with that, or maybe like a brand that you love that you think absolutely nails that in terms of that whole brand experience?
I think what I can speak about is like these kinds of processes where you get to really understand your market, your clients and their wants and needs, their market, who their consumers are, what their revenue streams are, like everything really deep strategically, and come up with I like to think of designing a brand as designing a person. You want to think about the brand as one person. You like to imagine it as one person doing all the graphic design, all of the marketing, all of the copywriting, all of this. And so if you think about this dream person who's speaking to the entire audience, the entire clientele, the entire like market, what do they how do they sound? How do they dress? What do they actually look like? Are they a man or a woman? Are they older or younger? Are they maybe mother of three working, a part-time job, or is it some, hotshot corporate dad, or, what does this person look like? How do they speak, and how do they make you feel when they speak to you? And so getting to know, the market, the clients, like everything so deeply helps you build an idea of who this person might be that's speaking on behalf of the company. Um, and so I'm working, with a couple of brands at the moment. And this is a way that I've really like engaged them on helping them build their dream persona that's representing their brand. And that's I'm trying to think of a brand that does it really well. All of my favorite brands are like high end. I'm massively into like you would never know, but I really love fashion. I dress like a slob, but I love like high street fashion, like really like offbeat brands like Acne Studios, a lot of the more off kilter stuff, Damps and Matter, things like this, a lot of the Scandinavian brands.
I love when you're speaking about creating a brand as a person, because I feel like all of those brands, like I can have in my brain a really like
Yeah.
an aesthetic and a person that
Yeah.
I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of that brand.
Yeah.
And I think that allows the customer to resonate more strongly with it if
Yeah.
they see themselves, or even aspirationally if they want to be like that.
Exactly.
So I love that. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about when you're creating a brand strategy, or a brand persona, visual identity. Like, how do you start? Like, what is the process that you go about? Are you a mood boarder? Are you what are you thinking about? What are you looking at in that kind of ideation stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that my background lends itself. I always love the analogy that my dad is actually an engineer. My mum is an artist. And I like to think that I sit somewhere in this like happy medium of creative, but also quite logical, strategic, methodical. One of my favorite steps is actually the first step, which is just discovery. So a questionnaire which speaks to the clients, not just about their individual aspirations for themselves and for the brand, but also collectively, like how do they, what are their short-term, long-term goals, things like this. And that helps build that, understand that deeper brand personality and the aspirations that they have for the brand and how it will place itself within the market. And then that really helps build a manifesto, pillars for them to stand on, core values and things like this, which build the messaging, which build the personality, which all is so critical before you actually get to how anything looks and feels. I think, the way that it's all well and good to put pen to paper, and don't get me wrong, like I'm always in the background doodling. I cannot draw. Yeah, but I'm always doodling and like even jotting down little notes of ideas about how things might look. But it's all well and good to start there. But what you need to underpin a really a brand that does really resonate is for it to stand on the legs of what the business is trying to achieve. So that's where I'd start. And then you get into, actually, what have you seen out in the world that you like? What have you seen out in the world that you don't like? And starting to build like a visual identity from there.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Like thinking about, okay, what are the business's goals? What do they want to achieve here? And how could the brand support that, as opposed to just like, creating some fluffy, pretty brand that doesn't really resonate with like their personality or their key customer or what they're trying to say.
I think it helps as well to help create an image that is more timeless and will stand the test of the test of changes of market, but also completely avoiding trends. If you there are certain topics like sustainability and things which fall in and out of trendy at the moment, and so finding out where those values sit and helping build something from that helps avoid like hot topics and buzzwords and things like this. These are not things that you want to build your brand on. You want to build it authentically. Yeah.
When you're building a brand, you need to think about it, as you say, like long term. It needs to be timeless, because I feel like trends do come and go, and maybe 2 years later down the line, you're investing in a brand new rebrand could be that could rack up some expenses after a couple of years.
Yeah. You want something that's gonna last a little while. Yeah, speak to your audiences and also just look good. Like a lot of things do resonate with their consumers, but perhaps they don't age well after 5 years as cycles change.
Okay, we'll do a little quick fire to wrap up. What is your favorite branding tool or resource that you found lately?
I am deep in the Figma cult now.
Girly.
I've ditched the Adobe suite for a little bit, and I'm big in the Figma space at the moment. Yeah.
Dream brand that you'd love to design for?
I think I already kind of mentioned this, but I would love to work for any kind of high street fashion label. I think that the artistic direction on some of their campaigns is just fun, just out of the box thinking.
Love that. And what's one book, podcast, or course that you'd recommend for freelancing or branding or web, anything?
Basically anything on Udemy or Domestika. I'm always doing little courses for the most random skills. I've recently learned to tattoo online. I haven't transitioned to real people yet, but got myself a tattoo gun and some fake skins. And took a course online because it was just something that interested me. A Udemy or a Domestika license to just go and pick up a little weekend skill. Do it.
And you'll be tattooing your friends by the weekend.
My arm is about to be covered.
Asher, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been awesome. Where can people find you?
Through Ellie Jane Creative, the girl boss of my dreams, or I guess on Instagram or my email. So Asher Haynes, hello@asherhaynes.com, or on my Instagram, which is actually as_her.
Thank you so much, Asher.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap of Booked and Branded. If you loved it or even kind of just liked it, feel free to DM me at Ellie J. Neal. I love a voice memo, so drop in and say hi. If you're feeling generous, please leave a rating, a review, or even just chuck us a follow. It helps me keep bringing you these conversations. Until next time, stay booked, stay bold, and don't be afraid to make some noise.